Hello, the internet. One of the reasons I really like YouTube is because you can see my face, but you don't really need to see people's faces and you can have conversations just in the comments and you can have arguments about like racism and whatever. And, you don't necessarily see their faces, so you can't like assign a race to their opinion. And I think it just makes it easier for people to talk about things that they wouldn't want to talk about in person. It's racism is a really hot topic, and there's a lot of emotions involved. And one thing that I really notice is that white people don't want to talk about racism. And I think it's a shame because I really think white people should talk about racism even if they are wrong, and it happens, but I do think it is a valuable contribution to be able to hear the people's voices of every race about racism, because you should be able to like kind of be able to zero in on like the reality. But there's always going to be but you just have to acknowledge that there's always going to be, like, when it comes to how black people feel about racism, the best way to find that out, you're going to have to ask a black person. And to see how just some people are just more qualified to talk about certain topics. And that doesn't mean, in my opinion, I've heard it's been from white people, but I've only heard that white people aren't allowed to have opinions from white people. Like, I've never heard, you know, I've never heard a minority be like, oh, you're not allowed to have an opinion because you're white. I mean, like, when you're when you have dark skin, you have it your whole life, and people are gonna say things. Like, you're just people just say things, and you don't. It's not like it's not like every time somebody says something racist to me, I go like to my room and I just sob and I cry and I like throw a tantrum. Like, sometimes, a lot of times it's easier to not talk about it, but it is something that I feel is relevant, but it's probably something I won't bring up in person because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Although, it happens though. It does happen. I feel like this last election, I feel like this is a really relevant topic because I feel like this last election there was so much. Oh, somebody I was there was a clip, and it was on the View, and somebody used the word, Trump got elected because of the white lash against Obama, and the white lady, I don't know if she was a Republican, but the white lady was saying, "Oh, there wasn't really a white lash. That's not the reason people voted." And Whoopi Goldberg was like, "There was a little bit of white lash." And I think there was. There really was. I mean, maybe you shouldn't use the word white lash, but I think when Donald Trump was the one that like headed that movement of Obama's not really an American, he was born in Kenya, I think that really shows that it really was about race. It really was about Obama's race. And at this point, if you can't admit that, like, I feel like you're, I don't want to say a lost cause, but I feel like it's pretty obvious that this is what it's about, and if you can't acknowledge that, then it's like you're actively trying to not see it. So if you're actively trying to not see it, then that's nobody's fault but your own. And there's no thing that I could say or anybody else could say to change your opinion because you've already decided that it's not about race and whatever. Yeah, I didn't really have a direction with this video. I didn't really know my opinion. I just wanted to like I would just hope that like people feel more comfortable talking about it to on a comment section. And I don't think anybody's going to. I'm not exactly famous, but I would like to open that door, and I would like anybody to say anything, and I think, you're entitled to your opinion, but I also think your opinion is vulnerable to being wrong when you express it. So, maybe it's safer to not express it, but everybody does have an opinion, even if you don't want to admit it. And I think you should believe it, but I also think you shouldn't think that just because you have an opinion, it's already correct. I think, you should be a little malleable and see what the differences are, but you should also try to keep a grasp in reality. Like I do think there's this I don't remember who made this joke, but somebody said reality has a liberal bias. And I think because you see news and you watch every news channel and then Fox. And you can just tell that they're a little out there. They're a little just not as well aligned with reality as everybody else seems to be. And when if you want to go Alex Jones, that stuff is nuts. But when you see like really extreme liberals, it's not that. It's there. Nobody's saying that there's chemtrails or that there's AIDS vaccines and GMOs. They'll be saying things like if you're I don't know why this is the most controversial thing I can think of, but like if you're against being with a trans person, it's probably because you're transphobic. And I've seen a few people make videos. I've seen Blair White make videos because Riley Dennis said something along those lines. And a lot of people have been really. Even Lacey Green said something like what. And I know Shuan Head said something. They're all like, "Oh, you just want us to sleep with you, and you're calling us bigoted if we don't sleep with you." But I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. But that would be my example of like a crazy liberal. I mean, I guess there's communism. That could be. I think that's liberal because Republicans seem to fall on the capitalist side. I don't know if that counts because that's economic instead of social. Anyway, yeah. So racism. Do you think it's real? Do you think it's happening? How do you feel about anything I've said? Could you leave a comment? Do you really think? Does anybody actually think that affirmative action is against white people? Because I know that's Trump's thing right now. Because I have heard that. I remember hearing that in school. I think I actually said that once. But yeah, I mean, if you look at history, that really looks like it's wrong. It doesn't look like that's against white people at all. It's because there was only white people in college, so they wanted to make it a bit more equal. But then you have that argument, like they said in Dear White People, you have that argument that, oh, well, the more qualified white people are not getting into college because they're prioritizing minorities. And I even see that like in casting on TV. I saw a comment. I was watching a commercial for the Avengers cartoon, and they had Miss Marvel, who's Muslim, and they were like, oh, I guess Marvel has a minority quota because there was like one Muslim. White people are being discriminated against. I don't know. I think it's an overreaction, to be honest, but you can disagree with me. Alright, goodbye. Good night.